The great library of Zephyr floated in space like a crystal mountain. Inside its walls, millions of stories from across the galaxy waited in silence. Scholar Namara moved between the tall shelves, her blue skin glowing softly in the dim light. She had spent 300 years reading these ancient tales, but today she looked for something special. Her long fingers touched a dusty section marked Extinct Species. Most scholars never came here. Why read about the dead when the living galaxy had so much to offer? But Nimura loved old stories. She believed they held truths that modern people had forgotten. She pulled out a thick book bound in strange metal. The cover showed a picture of a blue and green world circling a yellow star. Below it, words in the old language spelled out Earth, the human homeworld. Nimura opened the book and began to read. The humans, according to these pages, had been unlike any other species in the galaxy. They lived on a dangerous world where massive storms could level cities, and the ground itself would shake and split open. Most species would have left such a place, but humans stayed. They built their homes stronger. They learned to predict the storms. When the earth shook, they helped each other rebuild. Nimura read about their strange bodies. They had no natural armor like the Krex warriors. Their claws were tiny and useless. They could not fly like our own people. Yet somehow they had survived everything their world threw at them. The book said they had something called stubbornness that made them keep trying, even when everything seemed hopeless that far across the galaxy. In the military headquarters of the Krex Empire, Commander Vextar slammed his armored fist on the metal table. His red eyes burned with anger as he looked at the young soldier standing before him. "You want to study what?" Vextar's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "The human battle tactics, sir," the soldier said, trying not to shake. "The old records show they fought wars that lasted for years. They never gave up, even when... Fairy. Tales," Vextar roared. "Humans are myths, soldier. Stories to scare children. No species could do the things those legends claim. Fighting for decades without surrender. Impossible. The weak die quickly in real war." The young soldier nodded quickly and left, but Vextar stared at the door long after it closed. Deep in his private files, he kept copies of those same human stories. He told himself he'd read them only to laugh at such foolish tales. But sometimes, late at night, he wondered what it would be like to face an enemy that simply refused to die. In the cold darkness between stars, something stirred. The exploration ship U.S. Defiant drifted through space, its hull scarred by micrometeorites and radiation. Inside, machines hummed quietly, keeping 4 humans alive in their sleep pods. They had been dreaming for 43 years. Captain Jake Morrison was the first to wake. The pod opened with a soft hiss, and he breathed real air for the first time in decades. His body ached, but his mind was sharp. The ship's computer had woken him for a reason. "Status report," he said, his voice rough from long sleep. "Multiple system failures, Captain," the computer replied in its calm voice. "Asteroid impact has damaged the main drive. Life support is stable, but running on backup power. We need repairs." Jake pulled himself out of the pod and floated to the control panel. His training kicked in automatically. First, check the crew. Then, assess the damage. Finally, find a solution. It was simple, but it had kept humans alive in space for over a century. The other pods opened one by one. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez emerged first, her dark hair floating in the zero gravity. She had been Jake's second in command for 8 years before the mission began. Next came Chief Petty Officer Mike Sullivan, a broad man with clever hands who could fix anything that broke. Last was Sergeant Lisa Grant, young but skilled with computers and communication systems. "How bad is it, Captain?" Amy asked, pulling herself to the nearest console. "Bad enough," Jake replied. "We need a shipyard. Or at least a place to buy parts. Mike, can you give me a real assessment?" Mike was already pulling apart a control panel, his tools floating around him like metal fish. "The main drive is cracked, but not broken. I can patch it, but we need new coolant and some rare metals. Nothing I can make from what we have on board." Lisa checked the navigation system. "I'm picking up signals, Captain. Looks like a major trade station about 6 days away at low power. The signals are ... strange, though. Not like anything in our databases." Jake nodded. They had known this might happen. Earth had sent them to explore beyond the known edge of human space. Meeting aliens had always been a possibility, but after decades of searching empty systems, they had started to think they were alone in the universe. "Are the signals hostile?" Amy asked. "No, they look like normal commerce traffic." "But Captain, some of these energy signatures are huge. Whatever built that station has technology we've never seen." Jake looked at his crew. They were good people, trained for exactly this situation. But they were also very far from home, with a damaged ship and no way to call for help. Standard protocol said they should try to hide and make repairs on their own. But that could take months they didn't have. "Opinions?" he asked. Amy spoke first. "We don't have much choice. We need those repairs." Mike nodded. "I can keep us running for maybe 2 more weeks. After that, life support starts failing." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "Captain, what if they don't want to help us? What if they see us as invaders?" "Then we deal with that when it happens," Jake said. "But right now, we have a ship full of people depending on us to get them home." We go to the station. Back in the great library, Imara found a passage that made her stop reading. It described a human saying, "When you have no good choices, make the best choice you can and see it through to the end." She wondered what kind of species would think that way. Most beings tried to find the safest path. But humans, if these stories were true, seemed to choose the hardest path and then refused to turn back. She closed the book and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy continued its slow dance of politics and trade. The council maintained order. The military kept the peace. And everyone believed they knew all the species worth knowing. But Nemara had a strange feeling that change was coming. The old stories felt too real, too detailed to be simple myths. Maybe, just maybe, the humans were still out there somewhere, making their hard choices and seeing them through to the end. She had no way of knowing that at that very moment, a small human ship was limping toward the edge of known space, carrying 4 people who were about to turn 1,000 years of assumptions upside down. The U.E.'s Defiant crawled through space toward the massive station that hung in orbit around a purple gas giant. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the view screen, trying to understand what he was seeing. The station was bigger than any human city, made of metal and crystal that glowed with inner light. Ships moved around it like insects around a flower, but these ships had shapes that made no sense to human eyes. "Captain, I'm getting response signals," Lisa Grant said from her communication station. "They single quotes complicated. The computer is having trouble translating." "Keep trying," Jake said. "Amy, what do you make of their ship designs?" Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez studied the tactical display. "They're using some kind of energy shielding I've never seen. No visible weapons, but that doesn't mean they're not armed. The power readings are incredible." Mike Sullivan looked up from his repair work. "Captain, the main drive just gave another warning. We've got maybe 6 hours before it fails completely." Jake made his decision. "Lisa, open a channel." Standard first contact protocol. Lisa's fingers moved over her controls. "Channel open, sir." "Unknown station. This is Captain Jake Morrison. of the Earth vessel Defiant. "We are explorers from the human species. Our ship is damaged, and we request permission to dock for repairs. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly relations." The response came quickly, but it was chaos. Lisa winced as dozens of voices spoke at once in different languages. Alarms could be heard in the background. Finally, one voice rose above the others, speaking in broken but understandable English. "Earth vessel, you will stop moving immediately. You will prepare for inspection. Do not power weapons, or we will destroy you." Jake looked at Amy. "Weapons? We don't even have working engines." On the station, Commander Quindle of the Mallory Diplomatic Corps stared at his screens in confusion. His green skin had turned pale with worry. In 300 years of service, he had never seen anything like the ship approaching his station. "Run the identification scan again," he ordered his assistant. "Sir, the scan results are the same. The ship's design doesn't match any known species. The materials are primitive but effective. And sir, the computer keeps trying to classify them as something called humans from the mythology files." Quindle's large eyes blinked slowly. Everyone knew the human stories. Children loved the tales of the stubborn warriors who fought impossible battles. But they were just stories. No species could actually do the things humans were supposed to have done. "Get me Security Chief Breaktall," he said. Breaktall arrived within minutes, his massive frame filling the doorway. The Krex warrior's armor clinked as he moved, and his red eyes glowed with suspicion. "What is this nonsense about mythical species, Commander?" "Look at the data yourself," Quindle said, sending the files to Breaktall's personal display. "There. Ship has damage that suggests they've been in combat with something that should have destroyed them. The hull shows impacts from weapons we've never seen. But they're still alive, still flying." Breaktall studied the information. "Impossible. No ship that primitive could survive the kind of damage I'm seeing here. They must be spies using some kind of advanced technology to make their ship look weak. Or," Quindle said quietly, "the old stories are true." Back on the Defiant, the crew watched as alien ships surrounded them. Jake counted at least 20 vessels, each one larger than his ship. Their weapons weren't visible, but the energy readings suggested enough firepower to turn the Defiant into vapor. "Captain," Amy said, "I don't think this is going as well as we hoped." A new voice came over the communication system, deeper and more aggressive than the first. "Human ship, you will shut down all systems and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with force." Jake felt his jaw tighten. 43 years of sleep, months of travel, and now they were being treated like criminals for asking for help. But he kept his voice calm. "We are peaceful explorers. We only need repairs to continue our journey home." "You will comply or be destroyed," the voice replied. Mike looked up from his console. "Captain, they're powering up some kind of tractor beam. If they grab us, we won't be able to move." Jake had seconds to decide: surrender and hope for the best, or try something desperate. He looked at his crew. Amy was ready for whatever he decided. Mike had his hands on the engine controls. Lisa waited for orders. "Mike, can you give me a light show?" The engineer's face split into a grin. "What kind of light show, Captain?" "The kind that makes us look more dangerous than we are." Mike's hands flew over his controls. He rerouted power. From the coffee maker, the artificial gravity, and even the bathroom lights. All of it went into the navigation deflectors. The result was a brilliant display of energy that made the Defiant look like it was charging some terrible weapon. On the alien ships, warning alarms screamed. The humans had just powered up something that registered as a massive energy spike. To the aliens, it looked like the primitive ship was about to unleash a weapon more powerful than anything in Council space. "What are they doing?" Breaktall demanded. "Unknown energy buildup," his tactical officer reported. Power levels are... That can't be right. No ship that size should be able to generate that much energy. Breaktal made a quick decision. All ships, prepare to fire. But before he could give the order, the human captain's voice came over the radio again. Alien vessels, we do not wish to fight. But if you attack us, we will defend ourselves. Please allow us to explain our situation. The energy readings from the human ship suddenly dropped to normal levels, but the message was clear. Whatever weapon they had just charged, they could do it again. Quindle stepped in before Breaktal could start a battle. Human vessel, you will. Accompany our ships to Axiom Prime, where the High Council will decide what to do with you. Any attempt to flee will result in your destruction. Jake looked at his crew again. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and far from home. But they were also alive, and that was more than they'd had a few minutes ago. Understood, Alien Commander. We will comply. As the alien ships formed an escort around the Defiant, Lisa managed to send a coded message toward Earth. It would take years to reach human space, but maybe someday it would bring help. For now, they were on their own, flying toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of two very different civilizations. Jake Morrison had no way of knowing that the stories of his species had been told for 1,000 years in the galaxy ahead. He also had no way of knowing that those stories were about to become reality. The council chamber on Axiom Prime was the most impressive room Jake Morrison had ever seen. The ceiling stretched up so high, it disappeared into misty darkness. Floating platforms held representatives from different alien species, each one stranger than the last. At the center sat a being that seemed to be made of pure light. Ancient beyond measure. High Chancellor Mordith had ruled the Galactic Council for 800 years. His voice echoed through the chamber like distant music when he spoke. So you claim to be humans, the mythical species from the old stories. Jake stood with his crew in the middle of the vast room. They looked tiny compared to the aliens surrounding them, but Jake kept his back straight and his voice steady. We don't know anything about stories, Chancellor. We're explorers from Earth. We've been traveling for over 40 years to reach this part of space. A creature that looked like a giant insect clicked its mandibles together. Impossible. The human homeworld was destroyed centuries ago. Everyone knows this. Amy Rodriguez stepped forward. With respect, sir, our world is very much alive. We left Earth in the year 2387 by our calendar. We have over 12 billion people living on our planet and its colonies. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Several council members spoke at once in different languages. Jake caught fragments of translation. Impossible, primitive, dangerous. Scholar Nimara floated down from her platform, her blue skin shimmering with excitement. She had rushed to Axiom Prime as soon as she heard about the humans. Now she stood before living proof that her years of study had been worthwhile. High Chancellor, if I may, she said, bowing respectfully. I have spent 3 centuries studying the human texts. These beings match the descriptions perfectly. Look at their body structure, their clothing, even the way they stand together when threatened. Commander Vextar's platform moved closer to the center. His red armor gleamed under the chamber's lights. Scholar, you speak of fairy tales. These creatures are obviously spies or invaders using false identities. No species could survive the battles described in those ancient stories. What? Battles? Mike Sullivan asked. He had been quiet until now, but his curiosity got the better of him. Imara's eyes lit up. The war against the Devourers. The texts say humans fought them for 50 years, never surrendering even when your cities burned. They say you kept fighting, until you drove them back into the dark between stars. Jake and his crew exchanged glances. They had never heard of any Devourers. Earth's history had wars, but nothing like what the alien described. I'm sorry, Jake said. But we don't know about any war like that. Maybe you're thinking of a different species. The chamber fell silent. Then General Kethvor, the council's military advisor, laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. You see? They cannot even remember their own greatest victory. These are not the legendary humans. They are imposters. High Chancellor Mordith was about to speak when every alarm in the chamber began to scream. Red lights flashed as emergency signals filled the air. A panicked voice came over the communication system. High Chancellor, we have massive energy signatures approaching the system. Unknown fleet. Estimate over 300 vessels. They're not responding to our signals. The floating platforms rearranged themselves as tactical displays appeared. In the air, Jake watched the readings with growing concern. The approaching ships were huge, and they were moving fast. General Kethver studied the displays, his face growing pale. High Chancellor, those energy signatures. They match Harketh swarm patterns. But the fleet is 3 times larger than any force they've used before. Fear filled the chamber. Jake didn't know who the Harketh were, but he could see the effect. Their name had on the aliens. Even Commander Vextar looked worried. How long until they arrive? Mordeth asked. 18 hours, High Chancellor. Our defensive fleet is scattered across 12 systems. We can only gather half our forces before they reach us. Amy moved to Jake's side. Captain, should we offer to help? Before Jake could answer, General Kethfor turned to them. Help? You? Have one small, damaged ship with primitive weapons. What could you possibly do against the swarm? Jake felt something familiar stirring in his chest. It was the same feeling he'd had during the war games back on Earth, when his instructors had given him impossible scenarios to solve. The feeling that said maybe impossible just meant no one had tried hard enough yet. General, we might not have big ships or fancy weapons, but we have experience with impossible odds. Commander Vextar laughed harshly. Experience? You have no idea what the Harketh are. They are machines that think, living metal that feeds on energy. They have conquered 17 star systems. They do not negotiate, they do not retreat, and they do not show mercy. Sounds familiar, Mike said quietly. Lisa Grant had been working with her small computer during the conversation. Now she looked up with a worried expression. Captain, I've been analyzing their tactical data. The Harketh attack patterns are... They're very direct. No subtlety, no complex maneuvers. Just overwhelming force. That's why they're so dangerous, General Kethver said. They cannot be outfought. They simply bring more ships than their enemies can handle. Jake studied the tactical display. The approaching fleet was enormous, but something about their formation bothered him. They moved in perfect lines, like a parade rather than a battle formation. High Chancellor, he said, I know you don't trust us. I know you think we're lying about who we are. But right now, you need every ship you can get. Give us a chance to prove ourselves. Mordith was quiet for a long moment. Around the chamber, council members argued in dozens of languages. Finally, the ancient being spoke. Captain Morrison, if you are truly human, then the legends say you are either the galaxy's greatest heroes or its most dangerous fools. I am. Not sure which would be more useful right now. He paused, considering. Very well. You may join our defense fleet. But you will follow orders from General Kethver, and if you attempt any treachery, you will be destroyed immediately. Jake nodded. Understood, Chancellor. As the council session ended, and beings rushed to prepare for battle, Scholar Nimara approached the human crew. Captain, there is something else in the old texts. Something about humans that might be important. What? Is it? Jake asked. The stories say that humans fight differently when they are protecting others. They say you become more than you were before. Amy smiled grimly. Scholar, We're about to find out if your old stories are true. High above them, the Harkith swarm continued its approach, confident in its overwhelming numbers. They had no way of knowing that, for the first time in 1,000 years, they were about to face the one species in the galaxy that had never learned the meaning of the word surrender. The bridge of the Council-Light cruiser CSS Harmony buzzed with nervous energy. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair, feeling strange in the alien vessel. The controls were different. The displays showed information in ways human eyes weren't meant to read, but Mike Sullivan had worked miracles to make them functional. "Captain, I've got the alien engines running 20% over their normal limits," Mike said from the engineering station. "The computer keeps warning me that it's dangerous, but the systems can handle it." Amy Rodriguez studied the tactical display. 12 Council ships under our command, Captain. They're good crews, but they've never fought this way before. Lisa. Grant looked up from her communication station. The Harkith fleet will be in weapons range in 40 minutes. General Kethver is ordering all ships to form defensive lines around the planet. Jake frowned. Standard formation? Yes, sir. The Council ships are taking positions to protect the shipyards and civilian areas. Through the main view screen, Jake could see the approaching enemy. The Harkith ships looked like giant metal insects, their hulls covered in spikes and weapon ports. They moved in perfect formation, hundreds of vessels that blotted out the stars. Amy, what do you think about their approach? Amy studied the enemy formation for several minutes. They're confident, Captain. Maybe too confident. Look at their spacing. They're flying like they expect no real resistance. Lisa, open a channel to all ships under our command. Channel open, sir. Jake took a deep breath. All vessels, this is Captain Morrison. I know you don't know us, and I know our tactics might seem strange. But today, we're not fighting for our species or our territories. We're fighting for each other. Stay close, watch your wingman, and remember that the enemy bleeds just like anyone else. The first engagement began badly. The Harkith ships opened fire while still far out of normal weapons range. Their energy beams lanced through space, striking 2 Council vessels before they could react. The aliens had weapons more powerful than anything in the Council fleet. All ships scatter and attack. General Kethvor's voice came over the radio. Standard engagement protocols. But Jake had different ideas. Belay that order. All ships form up on us. We're going in close. Captain Morrison, that is suicide. Came a voice from one of the alien ships. The Harkith will destroy us at close range. Trust me, Jake said. Mike, give me everything the engines have. Amy, target their command ship, the big one in the center. Lisa, coordinate our attack. Runs with the other ships. The CSS Harmony dove toward the Harkith fleet, with 11 other ships following close behind. The aliens had expected the Council forces to fight at long range, trading shots while staying safe. They weren't prepared for ships to charge straight at them. Amy's first shot caught a Harkith cruiser by surprise, punching through its shields and into its hull. Target damaged, Captain. They didn't expect us to get this close this fast. All ships, pick your targets and hit them hard, Jake ordered. Don't give them time to adjust. The small human-led fleet tore through the Harkith formation, like bullets through paper. The enemy ships tried to turn and track the fast-moving attackers, but their weapons were designed for long-range combat. At close range, they couldn't keep up. Captain, this is impossible, came a voice from one of the Council ships. We're actually damaging them, but the victory was short-lived. The Harkith adapted quickly, surrounding the small Council force. With overwhelming numbers, Jake watched as 2 more of his ships took heavy damage and fell behind. Captain, we're outnumbered 10-1, Amy reported. I don't think we can keep this up. Jake was about to order a retreat when Lisa's voice cut through the bridge chatter. "Captain, I'm picking up new contacts. Ships jumping into the system." On the main screen, space itself seemed to tear open as new vessels appeared. Jake's heart jumped as he recognized the angular lines and aggressive design of human warships. Admiral Kate Thompson's voice came over the radio, clear and strong. "Earth. Fleet to Captain Morrison. Sorry we're late to the party." Jake watched in amazement as the U-East Thunderbolt, U-East Retribution, and U-East Indomitable moved into battle formation. Behind them came a dozen smaller vessels, all flying the flag of Earth. "Admiral Thompson, how did you find us?" "Your message reached Earth 8 months ago, Captain. We've been following your trail ever since. Hope you don't mind, but we brought some friends." The human fleet hit the Harketh from behind while they were focused on Jake's small force. The U-East Thunderbolt opened fire with weapons that made the alien ships look like toys. Commander Ben Carter's voice came over the radio, full of excitement. "Captain Morrison, these things are tough, but they're not that smart. Watch this." The Thunderbolt did something that made every alien on both sides stop and stare. Instead of firing at the Harketh ships, it rammed straight into an enemy cruiser. The human ship's reinforced hull tore through the alien vessel like it was made of paper. "Ramming speed always works," Ben said cheerfully as his ship emerged from the wreckage, damaged but still fighting. The Harketh fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just minutes before, suddenly found itself caught between two human forces. The tactics they faced were unlike anything in their databases. Human ships worked together in ways that seemed to ignore basic military logic, covering each other's weaknesses and turning desperate situations into victories. Chief Navigator Rachel Stone coordinated the Earth fleet's movements from the U.E.S. Indomitable. All ships, pattern Delta 7. Let's show them how humans dance. What followed was less a battle than a demonstration. The human ships moved like they were connected by invisible strings, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. When the Harketh tried to surround one ship, they found themselves facing the guns of 3 others. Admiral Thompson's voice cut through the battle chatter. "Captain Morrison, we're reading Harketh boarding parties heading for some of the Council. Ships. Can your people handle ship-to-ship combat?" Jake smiled grimly. "Admiral, we've got Danny Brooks and his Marines on standby. I think the Harketh are about to learn something new." As the space battle raged around them, Sergeant First Class Danny Brooks and his squad prepared to show the galaxy what happened when someone tried to board a human ship. The aliens were about to discover that humans didn't just fight differently in space. They fought differently everywhere. On the bridge of the lead Harketh vessel, the swarm commander stared at his tactical displays in confusion. His fleet was being torn apart by ships that should have been destroyed in the first few minutes of combat. For the first time in the swarm's long history of conquest, they were facing something they had never encountered before, not an enemy that got stronger. When things looked hopeless, the corridors of the U.E.S. Retribution echoed with the sound of metal claws scraping against steel. The Harketh boarding party had cut through the hull and was moving toward the ship's engine room. Their biomechanical bodies gleamed in the dim emergency lighting as they advanced, confident that they would find the same easy victory they had achieved on 100 other worlds. They were about to be very surprised. Sergeant First Class Danny Brooks crouched behind a glass door with 5 of his Marines. He had been fighting in space for 12 years, but this was his first time facing aliens. The tactical display showed 23 Harketh moving through the ship's lower decks. They were bigger than humans, stronger, and covered in natural armor that could stop most weapons. "Remember," Danny whispered to his squad, "these things have never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of. Use that The first. Harketh rounded the corner and Danny's Marines opened fire. The alien's armor absorbed most of the shots, but it stumbled backward in surprise. No species had ever ambushed them in their own ship's corridors before. "Move, move, move!" Danny shouted, his Marines scattered in different directions, using the ship's own structure as weapons. Private Kelly Martinez dropped through a maintenance hatch and came up behind the aliens. Corporal Tom Wilson used the artificial gravity controls to make the enemy's own weight work against them. Private First Class Sam Johnson turned the ship's fire suppression system into a weapon, flooding the corridor with foam that blinded the aliens. The Harketh tried to adapt, but every time they learned one human trick, the Marines used 3. More, the aliens were used to enemies who fought in predictable ways. Humans fought like the ship itself was alive and helping them. Meanwhile, the space battle was reaching its climax. The Harketh mothership, a massive vessel that dwarfed even the largest human ships, was trying to escape. Commander Ben Carter of the U's Thunderbolt had other ideas. "All power to engines," he ordered his crew. "We're going to ram that thing." "Sir, ramming a ship that size will destroy us," his navigator warned. "Maybe," Ben said with a grin. "But it'll definitely destroy them. And sometimes that's how you win." The Thunderbolt accelerated toward the Harketh mothership, its experimental weapons charging for one final shot. At the last second, Ben fired everything the ship had directly into the alien vessel's main reactor. The explosion lit up space like a new star. The Thunderbolt emerged from the fireball, its hull glowing with heat and covered in scars, but still flying. The Harketh mothership broke apart, sending debris in all directions. Admiral Kate Thompson watched from the bridge of the U.S. Indomitable as the remaining Harketh ships began to retreat. In 30 years of military service, she had never seen an enemy break so completely. The swarm that had conquered 17 star systems was running away from a handful of human ships. "All vessels, pursue and destroy," she ordered. "Don't let any of them escape." Back on the Retribution, the Harketh boarding party was down to 6 survivors. They had barricaded themselves in the ship's cafeteria, surrounded by human Marines who seemed to appear and disappear like ghosts. The aliens had never experienced fear before, but now they understood why other species spoke of humans in whispers. Danny Brooks stood in the cafeteria doorway, his rifle pointed at the remaining Harketh. "Surrender, and we'll let you live," he said. The lead alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "We do not surrender. We do not retreat. We are the Harketh." "Yeah, well," Danny said, "we're humans. And we're the ones holding the guns." The final firefight lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was over, the Retribution was quiet except for the hum of its engines. Danny and his Marines had done something no other species had managed in decades of war. They had defeated Harketh warriors in hand-to-hand combat. In the council chamber on Axiom Prime, the representatives watched the battle's end on their screens. The human fleet was pursuing the retreating Harketh, picking off their ships one by one. What had been the largest invasion force in galactic history was now a scattered collection of burning wrecks. High Chancellor Mordith turned to scholar. "Nem Ara. It appears your ancient texts were more accurate than we believed." Commander Vexstar stood silent, his red armor reflecting the light from the tactical displays. He had spent his life studying warfare, but he had never seen anything like what the humans had just accomplished. They fought with a creativity and determination that made his own species look primitive. "High Chancellor," General Kethver said quietly, "we need to discuss the implications of this. The humans destroyed a Harketh fleet that outnumbered them 5 to 1. If they wanted to, they could probably conquer half the galaxy." Captain Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system from the CSS Harmony. "Axiom Prime Control, this is Captain Morrison. The enemy has been defeated. Our fleet is standing by for orders. Mordith activated his own communication system. Captain Morrison, please return to Axiom Prime. The Council wishes to speak with you. 2 hours later, Jake stood before the Council again, but everything had changed. The aliens no longer looked at him with suspicion or disbelief. They looked at him with something much more complex, respect mixed with fear. Captain Morrison, Mordith said, the Council has voted. Humanity will be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Jake nodded. Thank you, Chancellor. We accept. There is more, Mordith continued. The Council has also voted to offer humanity the position of primary military protectors for this region of space. Your species has proven that you can do what our combined fleets could not. Jake looked at his crew, then back at the Council. Chancellor, we didn't come here to become warriors. We came to explore and make friends. And you have done both, Mordith replied. But sometimes, Captain, the best way to protect your friends is to make sure their enemies are afraid to attack them. Scholar Nimara floated down from her platform, her blue skin glowing with excitement. Captain, there is something I must tell you. The old texts speak of a human saying, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." I believe I now understand what it means. Jake smiled. It means we prefer peace, Scholar. But if someone forces us to fight, we make sure they remember why that was a bad idea. As the Council session ended, beings from across the galaxy began updating their databases. The entry for humans was changed from mythological to active ally. But more importantly, a new warning was added to the diplomatic protocols of every species in known space. The warning was simple. When dealing with humans, remember that they are the species who turn impossible odds into victory, who fight hardest when everything seems lost, and who make friends by standing beside them when the universe tries to tear them down. Approach with respect, offer friendship freely, and never, ever threaten the things they care about. The age of human legends was over. The age of human reality had begun.